Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and all the great people on the other side of the screen. My name is Osnir, and welcome to my reading room, to my old-timer Mazda. It was a month ago I started recording videos for Academic Driving YouTube channel. So my initial idea was just to keep you entertained, to keep myself entertained, and to help us survive the COVID-19 times, very strange and actually exhausting times. So my channel grew. Thank you for subscribing, for paying attention to that. My hair grew alongside with that channel, so I'm waiting for barbershops to open that I can just, make myself look more beautiful. What I want to say to you right now, thank you for being with me. I hope you are feeling entertained with what I do, with my articles. And today, by the way, there's a time for another article. The article about Kant, Immanuel Kant, and his approach to liberal democracy and capitalism. So the article was published in summer of 2019, so it's sort of fresh. It was published in my book Advanced Academic Driving, so check out for the link somewhere below. And yeah, let's go into that. 4 wheels of capitalism and democracy. What kind of society does it take to build an ultimate Volkswagen Beetle? Imagine that it is late 19th century outside, and your name is Immanuel Kant. You inherited a workshop somewhere in Königsberg, and you think of building a perfect people's car, an ultimate Volkswagen Beetle. Just imagine, do not ask anything. The ultimate Beetle should come with a sporting pedigree. It should be spacious, rear engine, rear drive, reliable and affordable. The people's Porsche. Not an easy thing to build. What will you do? You will definitely start with some social engineering, rooted in certain environments and values, because, well, you are Immanuel Kant. The 18th century Königsberg, now Kaliningrad, was located in Prussia, now Russian Federation. Speaking of the latter, Voltaire claimed that where some states have an army, the Prussian army has a state. The House of Hohenzollern ruled Prussia for quite a while and expanded its possession by forcefully collecting pieces of land from its neighbors. After the defeat of Napoleon in 1815, Prussia grew huge. It stretched along the northern European coast for hundreds of miles, from contemporary Belgium to Latvia. In 1871, Prussia became the core of the German Empire. As you may guess, the state was sort of warmonger, and it was good at making neighbors stressed. This said, Kant was a sort of Prussian hippie. He was born in 1724 into a humble Christian Protestant family in Königsberg. His father was a harness maker. Immanuel's early education was mainly about religion, faith, and humility. Afterwards, when he started interacting with natural sciences and mathematics, his Christian ideas faced hard times. Immanuel struggled to reconcile the wisdom of the Holy Bible with results of his calculations and discoveries. At least, he struggled to do that at first. With time, he arrived at the importance of morality in everyday life, specifically the kind of morality nurtured by Christian humanism. Do only those things to another person which you would like to be done to you. And that put him at odds with all that Prussian warmonger thinking. Kant understood that conquering a piece of land from your neighbor would definitely anger your neighbor. The latter would seek revenge and eventually would get it. Also, waging wars and joining conflicts would make your soldiers suffer and die on battlefields. And life, mates, is an irretrievable value. You cannot take it back. So, Kant concluded that military campaigns had often been lose-lose, or at best win-lose scenarios. Prussia, with its history of conquests and defeats, provided him with a plethora of examples. Kant started thinking about how to secure prosperity, peace, and happiness for all people, all over the world. He wanted to invent a win-win scenario and reinforce universal morality. For this reason, he rejected any kind of international confrontation straight away. What he was left with was another C word: cooperation. And that struck the deal. In Perpetual Peace, a philosophical sketch, his book, Kant listed several conditions that he thought necessary for ending all wars. In particular, he advocated that there should be no secret treaties allowing for future wars, no unwelcome usurpation of states, no undermining legitimate governments, no standing armies, no aggression to solve national debt problems, and no dirty policy making during times of war: assassins, poisoners, breach of capitulation, incitement to treason, and others. These conditions led Kant to point out 3 definitive articles which would cease hostilities. He stated that 1. All states should be republican, what he meant, having legitimate and representative governments. 2nd, there should be free will respect to international law. And 3rd, all citizens should enjoy universal hospitality. What he meant was no discrimination, no matter where you go. Apart from this, Kant arrived at the importance of trade in good neighborly relations. He noticed that the economically developed states preferred soft negotiations to hard confrontations. Kant named that the spirit of commerce, and claimed that it would sooner or later take over the world and make wars redundant. Trade, exchange, and investments, regardless of borders, were the keys to win-win scenario. Trade, exchange, and investment allowed people to gain access to new resources with no or few problems. Finally, trade, exchange, and investment nurtured trust, friendship, and morality. Because good friends who benefit from fair cooperation do not fight, do they? In a word, Kant believed that peaceful relations between people and states could be possible in an environment of genuine democracy, with respect to laws and healthy capitalism. He also claimed that such would be the eventual outcome of the history of humankind, whether you like it or not. Now, let me back to cars. Imagine Kant's father decided to curtail his harness business and pass the workshop to his offspring. There were 9 children in the family, though only 5, including our hero, survived into adulthood. To inherit the business, Immanuel would first need to win elections and become confirmed as a boss by the workshop employees. He would need to be legitimized as the leader. That would require his promo campaign to sound more convincing than that of his sisters and brother. Then, the incentive to switch from saddle making to car manufacturing might actually gain employee support. Following the elections, Immanuel would have to sketch a plan for an ultimate people's car, because he promised to do so. That would include answering at least 2 questions. First, what kind of driving qualities should this car possess? And second, where could he get materials, parts, and tools, and get them cheap? The first question is comparatively easy to answer. As mentioned above, the people's car should be spacious, fun, reliable, and affordable. Thus, it should definitely have a rear engine and be rear drive, like a humble Beetle with Porsche's heart. However, how should he overcome tough engineering and financial challenges to build such a car? As you may assume, Immanuel's newly established automotive workshop would be small and would lack resources. And here is the moment where the neighbors come into play. Immanuel would need to seek support from other workshops and their bosses. He would need to negotiate regular supplies of parts and tools. He would also need to agree on outsourcing jobs to save costs. But all these arrangements and concessions would pay off if partners agreed to keep their word and tolerated no cheating. For everyone's good, they would need to abide by the rule of law and follow common obligations. In this case, the parts and services would always be of the highest quality and perfectly timed. All interested workshops would probably unite into trade or labor unions. This would set a common regulatory body, boost benefits from cooperation, and establish developed networks of supplies and distribution. Trust and cooperation between workshops would eliminate the necessity for any of them to use force. Trust and cooperation would lead to mutual enrichment and secure a win-win scenario, which was so much praised by Kant. And yes, interested workshops will not perceive one another as competitors or rivals. In their turn, cruising along in their ultimate Beetles, the drivers of Königsberg would also get their share of satisfaction. Now, mates, Kant's peace-centered philosophy has something in it. There is no Prussia today. The state was overridden by its neighbors, who sought revenge. Today, the German-speaking population constitutes a minority on land which once was the core of the German Empire. At the same time, we have another project which adheres to Kant's values, the European Union. It was built around trade, for cooperation, and against the war. In 2012, the EU was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for, quote, over 6 decades' contribution to the advancement of peace and reconciliation, democracy and human rights in Europe, end quote. Mates, the EU secured the longest peacetime period in the history of the continent. It is European Union, not Prussia, which allows each of us to set up workshops and start assembling Beetles. We can grow our businesses, build new connections, and improve product quality. We can benefit from access to dealership and distribution networks. In turn, our customers can purchase our cars because they have money. Our customers can also be sure that their Beetles will not be forcefully appropriated by any foreign power. At this point, I would like to cite Jason Reed, whose Drive-Tribe publication often provide me with food for thought. In his article for today's Top News Tribe, Jason decided to analyze President Donald Trump's attempts to fix US foreign trade. Very bad trade, tremendously bad. As you may know, Trump wants to lift American import tariffs to bring automotive jobs back from Mexico and to make European car manufacturers pay more for the access to the US market. I'm quoting him. The European bloc exported 37.4 billion euros worth of cars to the US in 2017, while trade going the other way was just 6.2 billion euros, thanks to those extortionate import fees. Trump has threatened to lift the American tariff from 2.5% all the way up to 20% in an effort to redress the balance and return the money to his country. As well as bringing the jobs and investment back to the US, where they rightly belong, the tariffs Trump is threatening would also help to cultivate industry in Mexico. Thus, Trump is absolutely right to target the American offending companies harshly, for his condemnation of their business practices is wholly correct. Although they have only made the business choices that make the most sense in the economic climate, Trump's accusations that they have chosen profits over investment in the US and that his country is suffering as a result are entirely true. Hence, his threat of tough tariffs to discourage building abroad and importing. End quote. Kant would probably disapprove this Trump's approach. However, as we cannot ask for Kant's opinions directly, here you have my take on the issue. Above all, the US trade deficit with Europe stems from the fact that American cars are not very competitive in the European market. US car makers seem to adopt an inflexible global strategy. Here is an example. Imagine a bloke living in Whitby or other old English town, which is a bundle of narrow and curved streets. This bloke will naturally prefer the Mini to the Mustang or the Raptor for daily commuting. The same applies to blokes living in Spain, France, Germany, Poland, Austria, and other states. Does the US export anything similar to the Mini? Does it produce anything similar? While the French, German, Korean and Japanese car makers prove that it is profitable to export cars all over the world, the US strategy works well for only two foreign countries, which are China and Canada. And this has nothing to do with tariffs. General Motors tried its luck in Europe and, well, failed. One of the reasons for that was an attempt to feed the local market with the US best-selling vehicles. However, trucks and SUVs do not make Europeans open their wallets, unlike smaller cars. Then, the GM ambition was also hit by European environmental regulations, which required an overhaul of American drivetrains. Having to choose between major product upgrades and bidding farewell, GM bid farewell. Now, the issue with Mexico. As all of you know, labor costs in non-Western states are usually lower than in the West. Moreover, non-Western workers are usually less qualified than Western. That is what encourages US car makers to seek partnerships and open factories in the South. Because this move is a win-win. The people of Mexico get jobs, the US car makers save costs, and the US citizens get cheaper cars. In this light, it is not very wise to force the Americans do the work which can be done by someone else, somewhere else. It is also not very wise to make them pay more for the final product. Instead, it is better to encourage Americans to be more creative and successful by doing something that no one has ever done before. The US is one of the global leaders in innovations, so why not build on this? Mates, the Victorian era ended a long time ago, and we no longer need to locate production facilities in the state's heartland. Our era is the era of advanced technologies and global businesses. So why not fill the world with innovations instead of bringing manual labor back to the US? Finally, do not forget, if you cooperate with your neighbor on a mutually beneficial basis, this will make your neighbor praise that cooperation. Kant said so. Should work for Mexico. Postscriptum. Did you know that Mexico produced original Volkswagen Beetles up to 2003? Now you know. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with me. I hope this story entertained you, and yeah, see you next time. Consider subscribing, joining, checking out my books. Thanks.